Welcome. I'm Liz Taylor, ocean explorer, naturalist, and entrepreneur.
And I'm Sylvia Earle, oceanographer, explorer at large at National Geographic, founder of Mission Blue, and an ocean elder. Thank you,
Yes.
ocean elders.
This is our show, Dive In, where we host informal conversations with the ocean community on topics of wonder and interest. As usual, the most interesting thing is I try to share my screen. It looks like I had some success this time. Drag this guy over.
There we are.
Remarkable. We'll have Q&A towards the end of the conversation, but you can put your questions in at any time, and we'll get to them at the towards the end as usual. And we just wanted to start off by reminding everyone that
the world is
blue,
blue, very blue, especially when viewed from the Pacific. That's the world. Mostly aquatic place. It's a marine habitat.
I call it the big blue back of the planet. Those broad shoulders that hold it all together, right?
Right.
So today we're going to be joined by our longtime friend and collaborator, Roderic Mast. Rod heads up the Oceanic Society and is founder of the State of the World Sea Turtle Program, or SWOT.
SWOT, S-W-O-T. Yes. Yeah. This is just one of the issues. Oh, here we go.
SWOT. Yeah, your hand is over the title.
Them, which we'll hear about more shortly.
He co-chairs the IUCN Marine Turtle Specialist Group, and we met Rod initially during his 23-year-old tenure at Conservation International. And he sometimes has been known to dress up as a...
Well, he's better known to some as Mr. Turtle.
Mr. Turtle.
Mr. Leatherback, actually. And here, as he can explain better himself, he's saluting the place in San Salvador in the Bahamas where allegedly, or maybe actually, Christopher Columbus first established a toehold or a flipper in the North American part of the world.
Welcome, Rod.
Hey, there you are.
Hi there. Good to see you, Liz. Good to see you, Sylvia, as always.
So we're going to just dive right in here and start off with our happy World Sea Turtle Day. That was one day last week, wasn't it?
It's actually the Thursday of next week.
Thursday of next week. Excellent.
Oh,
yes, and I'm
get ready. I'm
very aware of it because it's also, we're in the middle of World Sea Turtle Week right now. So if you're on social media, you get, and you're somebody like me, you get a lot of turtle posts, and we've been focused on for the last several weeks, especially in all the last minute editing for the next volume of the State of the World Sea Turtles report, which we will launch on Thursday. So I've been very focused on that date as an important deadline for my team and myself.
So I get asked all the time, what is the difference between a turtle, a terrapin, a tortoise? What really sets the turtles apart?
Well, if you look at this picture here, this is a yellow turtle from the Galápagos. It's actually a green turtle, but it's called a yellow turtle because it's so yellow. And if you see, it has flippers. Turtles, there are in American English, we talk about turtles as pond turtles, land turtles, sea turtles. In the UK, in the Queen's English, they refer to turtles, and these are the only ones, the ones in the sea. And the ones that live in ponds are called terrapins, and the ones that live on land are called tortoises. But being here in America, the big difference for sea turtles is those flippers right there, the fact that they live in the ocean, they can't pull their head and flippers inside their shell, and a handful of other things. But the key things are that sea turtles are big, they have flippers, they live in the sea.
That's good. Those are the three key things. And you've got to, we're going to go through these, so you provided most of these slides to us, and I really appreciate that. Sylvia's thrown in a few ringers here, so we'll be surprised by those as they come along. But here's your sea turtle specialist group, and The SWOT?
The IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Yeah, you've been involved with taking care of turtles by whatever name for many years.
Yeah, most of my adult life, I've been a turtle guy. For the past, almost 20 years now, I've been the co-chair of the Marine Turtle Specialist Group of the IUCN. And if you're not familiar with the IUCN, it's basically the biggest conservation organization in the world. Not an organization in the sense that Mission Blue or Oceanic Society is a nonprofit, but kind of a federation of governments, nonprofits, individuals. It's sort of like the World Bank of conservation. And it has about that much bureaucracy and about that many people. And but it's a very powerful group, particularly the part of the group that deals with species. There's something called the Species Survival Commission. And within that commission, there's, I believe, 140 different groups representing all the different taxa of animals and plants and microorganisms in the world. And one of them is the Marine Turtle Specialist Group. It's been around since 1966.
Wow.
Right now, we're a group of about 300 experts, and we're the ones that decide whether an animal is endangered or critically endangered or threatened or vulnerable or least concern. And that's our main job as the Marine Turtle Specialist Group.
Yeah, looking at the evidence. Oh, and
There's some evidence.
there's real evidence.
I actually had that hair on this head naturally in 1981. This is kind of when this wasn't the start of my career, but I had worked a season prior to this on the coast of Georgia, getting familiar with loggerhead turtles. I was a young biologist, and when I was working with the turtles, I realized I was really more interested in the conservation, making sure that these animals survived, than I was in studying sort of the detailed biology of them.
Right.
And I asked my boss, well, which is the most endangered species of turtle? Where if I want to work with conservation issues, which species should I work on? And they sent me to Mexico, which is home of the most critically endangered of the 7 species of sea turtles. It's called the Kemp's Ridley. So I worked there for a year, and I've been very closely allied with the folks that are working to save that species ever since.
Well, the turtles, the females, they come ashore to lay the eggs, and they come back to the same places time and time again, don't they? From where the beaches where they originally hatched from.
Yes, they have a really high degree of site fidelity, and this is something that started as sort of a colloquial belief decades ago, but it's now been demonstrated through good science that the animals come back likely to the beaches where they were born.
And they've been around a really long time.
Yep, this is Archelon. You can see how big it is. It's about 110 million years old. They were still swimming around about 110 million years ago. And if you look at today's leatherback, other than the fact that today's leatherback is much smaller than this, it's pretty much the same animal as it was 110 million years ago. This is a leatherback. It is a very unique animal. It's the largest turtle on Earth. It's definitely one of the largest reptiles on Earth. I think the only one that's sort of neck and neck with a large leatherback is maybe a saltwater croc in Australia. Mm-hmm. Just notwithstanding the whales and some of the big pinnipeds, and of course whale sharks and things like that, this is one of the biggest creatures swimming around out in the sea, one of the megavertebrates that we like to talk about.
And they're vulnerable in part because of their size.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, gone friend E.O. Wilson once commented that humans over the years have decimated the large, the slow, and the tasty on the land, but it has applied to the ocean as well.
Yeah.
Right. And these are large, and some people think they're tasty. And when they come ashore to nest, they're slow.
Yeah, they're very vulnerable right then.
Yeah. And that is
the reproductive ones coming ashore, it makes them even more vulnerable to
Humans.
poaching and
They're
humans.
primates.
Right. This animal can swim away from you pretty fast if you're underwater. But if it's on a beach nesting, it's
Sitting duck,
sitting goose, a sitting goose, as they say.
sitting turtle. Yeah.
And not to mention the eggs that they lay are harvested, well, to this day in many places in the world, and are considered a food source.
Right. And other hazards that, when they come ashore, just things like light pollution and people driving on the beach that could, overrun the nests, and wild or feral pigs. Even people, when they're at the beach building a sandcastle and they dig a hole in the sand, or they're playing around in the sand, that can sometimes entrap turtles when they're trying to come ashore to nest.
That's true. Yeah. Light is actually one of those things that we don't think about that much, but this big female here has probably laid maybe 10 nests in her nesting season, about 2 weeks apart. Those little eggs are going to incubate. The little babies will come up out of the sand, and they're going to take one look, and they're going to look for the ocean based on cues that they established in their little sea turtle hard drives in their brains 110 million years ago, when there weren't any artificial lights around. So they can very easily get disoriented by beach lights and end up not going in the sea, but going the other direction. And that, they've got enough risks as it is, from birds and crabs and everything else on the beach and out in the water that wants to eat them. They really don't have the luxury of being able to waste any time to get to the ocean.
They can get there and get swimming.
That's right.
There they go. Look at him, little dude taking off.
They are mysterious because we do not get to where they spend most of their time. Where they migrate, how do they?
Yeah,
what do they? Just.
Yeah. We're getting a better handle on it now, but when I started working in sea turtles, there was something that they called the missing years, and scientists had seen the turtles, scurry down the beach and out into the surf, and wave bye-bye to them, and then they didn't see them again until they were like this big. And some turtles they didn't see again until they were, adults. And for the longest time, people didn't know where they went. They knew they were out in the ocean, but they didn't know what they were doing out there. Nowadays, we have a much better idea of what they do as hatchlings, as subadults, where they go, what the sorts of things that they eat. We don't have a 100% clear view of this, but for some species, we have a much better understanding now than we used to have. And there's still a lot of other things. Those leatherback turtles that I just showed you a picture of earlier, they can dive down to half a mile deep.
Wow.
And we don't know what they're doing down there.
Well, we hope that they're munching on something.
Hopefully.
And they live a long time. I think they're not only old in terms of their history, but how long for these?
Well, it's a question that comes up often, and we can't say for certain, because no one's ever put a tag on a little baby turtle and tracked it all the way until it died of old age. But I think it's safe to say that 60 to 70, maybe more years, not as long as one of those big Galapagos land tortoises, but a healthy life. And what's also makes them difficult to conserve is that they're very vulnerable, especially in those young life stages, to being eaten by a lot of things, just in nature, right? Think of the eggs. There's 100 different types of predators that will eat those eggs, even not considering man. Then the little babies come out. There's another 100 types of predators that will probably eat them, from crabs to birds to fish out in the water. And they have to live to, in some cases, 20 or 30 years old before they're sexually mature and can start reproducing again. So that's an awful long, that makes them very vulnerable. The ones that actually live to adulthood are, from egg to adulthood, are very, very few.
That's precious.
Well, having humans munch on them doesn't help.
No.
When I was a kid oceanographer some years ago in the Florida Keys, there were signs along the highway advertising turtle steak and turtle soup.
Mhm.
And down in Key West, there were pens that held turtles on their way to somebody's plate. That, fortunately, has stopped. This is a final leatherback. You probably recognize that face. And that's one of the great things about what we now know about turtles. Everyone is distinctive, like every cat, every dog, every human. They all have faces. They all have distinctive marks that set one from another, and their DNA, just like all of us, is separate as well. Who knew until kind of right about now, we're beginning to appreciate the diversity, not just among species, but as individuals.
He's got such a great face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it, and in fact, just in recent years, we've learned that they're so individually unique that with a facial recognition algorithm and a photograph, you can tag an individual animal and track it. So if that technology advances at the pace it's been advancing, soon we won't need to put flipper tags on them, because we'll just be able to recognize them with a photograph, just like the passport software does at the airport.
Yeah, or like humpback whale tails.
Right, exactly.
Other
Exactly.
features, yeah.
And in terms of humans killing them, it's I remember, Sylvia, when I invited you to come and be the keynote speaker at the Sea Turtle Symposium in Philadelphia many years ago, and we were all waiting for what was Sylvia going to say, and your first line was, well, the most important thing to do to protect turtles and to assure that they survive is to stop killing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, duh.
Everyone was like,
So-
yeah, I think that's right.
I popped back to this slide for a minute because I noticed that this turtle has some kind of interesting things
Barnacles,
growing
yeah.
on its back. And then Sylvia popped this image in.
Yeah, they're turtle barnacles that occur only on turtles.
Right. It's
Nowhere else. So if you lose turtles, you also lose another whole collection of organisms, the creatures that are hitchhikers. And sometimes,
yeah, and there are people that have studied epibionts, the stuff that grows on turtles' backs, for years, and there's a lot of stuff that grows on turtles' backs.
well, they're like islands individually.
Yeah.
So many creatures, whales, abalone, other slow-moving creatures in particular, but fast ones too, that have this. It's like a little floating city, each one.
So it's when you protect the turtles, you're protecting a host of other species. It's like,
Right.
and then when you protect a swimway, that's where the turtles go. You're protecting even more things. So it's all about starting off with these little pockets of biodiversity, and then
Right.
trying to figure out ways that you can have that force multiplier effect.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's no question that sea turtles, like everything else in the sea that's alive, and many of the things that aren't alive as well, are all part of a big interconnected web. And I'm often asked the question, well, will the world be okay without sea turtles in it? And no, it won't.
No.
I mean, because these animals, the green turtle, for instance, recycles turns grass into fertilizer more effectively than a cow. The same thing is the case with all these animals that they recycle nutrients. Look at this particular picture. This is something called an arribada, which is the Spanish word for arrival. This is how the olive ridley turtle in the Pacific nests. They all come ashore at once. Now these
Wow.
animals are going to lay, as I mentioned before, several nests, one every 2 weeks during the nesting season. Each one of them is probably 20 some pounds of eggs brought ashore for each one of those turtles. So they're moving an awful lot of biomass from the sea to the land. All kinds of stuff eats that biomass. Some of it gets converted into baby turtles and they go back to the sea, but a lot of it feeds the soil, feeds the mammals, feeds the things that eat on those critters.
And dare I say, whales poop. I mean, sea turtles poop. So
Turtle
whales
poop,
are
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
nutrients ashore from the deep sea.
Yeah.
And just turning over the sand in
Yeah.
the process, digging the holes that they do and moving them, moving back and forth across
Yep.
the sand, leaving those little sort of turtle runways. All of that really matters to the biodiversity of the beach.
Yep.
Look at those guys. So cool.
Yeah, I was just visiting one of those Arabada nesting beaches in Mexico last fall, and at a place in Mexico where they get maybe 1 million turtles in a nesting season.
Go back
Yeah,
just for a moment, because that's what the beach where sea turtles come. It's what it should look like from time to time.
We don't really need ATVs and 4x4s racing down that beach.
No, but
it was just crush all those eggs.
But for a while, it just seemed that they had disappeared, and the rediscovery, the beginning of a recovery, once we stopped killing them. I mean,
yeah, it was actually very fast. It was in the 90s, early 90s. They were still slaughtering these animals like crazy in Mexico and turning them into oil and meat and dog food and
just like whales
and weird trinkets. I mean, like hair combs and
yeah,
some of them more hawksbills in particular were valued for their shell.
Salad tongs.
Yeah, exactly. There's still some of that trade going on, although most CITES countries, those that are members of the Treaty for the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, there are no longer any reservations for hawksbill, so it is illegal amongst CITES countries to have commerce in hawksbill shell, but there's still a lot of illegal trade that goes on, and national trade, because the CITES doesn't protect what goes on inside the borders of sovereign nations.
Right, and so often we see that, any kind of illegal trafficking in wildlife, it's tied to all kinds of other kind of nefarious activities, but because there's not really hefty enough fines for the wildlife trade or wildlife poaching, that it happens more, and because it's so lucrative.
But it connects to trade in drugs,
arms,
humans, even people.
Yeah. So it's they're all kind of like flashed up in a bad way.
I think the really good news is that we are, although there are more of us, inexorably our numbers are increasing as they decrease. But there are actually more turtles today than when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. More sea turtles, because generally speaking, there have been moves to protect them and protect their nests. Certainly not perfect, but it's better than it used to be, and it is an indication that our behavior can make a difference.
Yes, it's absolutely true. You I don't know when you first went to Hawaii, but turtles were consumed and were available in the market in the 50s and 60s and maybe even into the early 70s. But then they came under federal protection, and it was strictly controlled. And you go to Hawaii nowadays, and there are turtles all over the place.
I know.
Oh, it's wonderful to go dive there and see them hanging out, being cleaned, and just
they come up on the beaches and bask because they're not afraid to.
People
it's a super success story of what's happened in Hawaii.
And people go there just specifically because they want to see the turtles,
I'm one of them.
But much more so than people that want to eat them, the people that want to go and say that they saw a turtle in the wild.
Yeah, there have been a number of studies that show that the actual monetary value of a living turtle exceeds that of by turning it into meat and selling the products by many of whole. It's a live turtle can generate millions in ecotourism revenues, for instance, whereas a dead one maybe $20 worth in a market or something.
Yeah.
And they're big carbon-based units too, capturing and holding and sequestering.
How do they sequester carbon?
It's in their big bodies.
In their big bodies, but long lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually I know someone did a calculation of that for whales. And whales are big, obviously, much bigger than than turtles, but there's not as many of them as there are turtles. And I've been curious to sit down and do that calculation for turtles as well. How much biomass globally do they actually occupy? How much how much carbon does that biomass sequester over how many
We
years?
need to keep it in the ocean
Yeah.
and not put it on our plates and let it dissipate into the atmosphere.
So this is one of the phenomenal behaviors. This is another one of the phenomenal behaviors. This is a leatherback tagged in one of the major Western Pacific nesting areas called Jamers Bamedi in Indonesia, up in the Bird's Head Peninsula. And this was a satellite tracked animal, 12,700, almost 13,000 miles, just
Wow.
an epic migration. And the reason they do that is because they eat jellyfish. And the best place to find jellyfish when they're not nesting season is along the US coast. So many of them travel to Oregon. If I could show you a map with several tracks on it, a lot of them would be right in Monterey Bay.
Mhm.
Don't they also dive deep? Because
Yeah.
the jellies don't just stay at the surface. Many of them are deepish.
Yeah.
The deep
Well-
scattering layer has a lot of not just jellies, but other delectable forms of life. So, and it isn't just the migrating turtles, but tunas and whales. All these high seas creatures go down deep to get their groceries while they're moving.
Right. So the biggest turtle in the world eats almost exclusively a food item, which is about 99% water. So
Huh.
they got to eat a lot of them to get that big and to stay that big. And in
Yeah.
fact, what they've discovered recently is that they don't even eat the whole jellyfish. They're very picky about the parts that they like and don't like. They like to just go up
Really?
underneath and eat the gonads and then leave
Sure.
it.
Well, the tasty bits,
The
right?
tasty
Yeah.
pieces. Yeah.
As
Wow.
if
What
there were
about-
any tasty bits of a jellyfish, but if you're a leatherback, apparently there are.
What about the Great Turtle Race?
Oh yeah, we this is an activity we did. We did it in 2007 and we did it again in 2009, where we took data from migrating turtles, along with the researchers that had gathered the data, and we turned it into a 2-week-long turtle race online. And we auctioned the naming rights to the turtles to whoever would buy them, corporations, rock bands, Sylvia Earle, and
Where was Sylvia Turtle? Was it- yeah.
and then we raced them online, and it was just an amazing public
Stephen
awareness event.
Stephen Colbert had a turtle.
Stephen Colbert had a turtle named after him in the first race, and he fell in love with the concept. He did 4 reports during the 2 weeks, which is like unprecedented. You can't buy that kind of PR.
Yeah.
And then with the second one that we did in 2009, it was right after the economic problems of late 2008. We couldn't raise any money from corporations because, imagine being a marketing exec at a big corporation and trying to convince your boss you should invest in a turtle race.
Turtle,
So we got Sylvia and I knocked on some doors with some friends. We got Pearl Jam to sign up for a turtle. We got Red Hot Chili Peppers. We had an ice cream company, I think. We had, and then we had a couple of schools in California as well sign up. And to help the PR, Pearl Jam's turtle won.
Excellent.
And their audience went crazy over it. So it was I think one of the things that is important to remember with turtles is that they're just one thing in the sea, but they help us tell a story. If you look at the things that threaten turtles, the main things that threaten turtles threaten a whole lot of other stuff in the sea. It's the integrity of the sea is impacted by fisheries, is impacted by habitat loss, is impacted by pollution, climate change, pollution and pathogens. So sea turtles help us tell that story and draw attention to the human behaviors that need to change to keep the ocean healthy, so that we have turtles, so that we have whales, so that we have fish and Sylvia's favorite horseshoe crabs.
And a hospitable planet to boot.
Yeah, oh yeah, oh that, a hospitable planet, exactly. I mean, it is a wonder that any little turtle ever grows up to be a big turtle, given the odds, given the many mouths, including humans, that have developed a taste for turtles. I like this, love this image of this little guy or girl. Might have a
Yeah, we can't tell.
Yeah,
You have to wait until they get much older before you can visibly tell what
It's a-
gender they are.
it's such a
and-
great reminder.
Yeah.
The little air breather, right?
Yep. Yeah, no gills.
Okay, what
Yeah,
is
let's
what is
put
going
this
on
in.
here? This is another one of these ones you slid in here on us. What is
Yeah,
this?
about the nesting. That
Yeah, that looks like a nesting green turtle, but I can't tell really well.
it certainly is.
Yeah.
You have a good eye. This is in Ascension Island, one of the places that curiously green sea turtles travel long distances to get to this little speck in the Atlantic. And usually it's timed to a certain phase of the moon.
Looks like a full moon here.
Yeah, that they come ashore in large numbers and deposit their next generation. I had a chance to get out there, and you can see the red light is out of courtesy for the busy mama turtles. If you have bright lights, it's not just the mama turtles, but for any emerging ones, as you pointed out earlier, light can really be a damaging factor. The regular bright lights that we usually have, but red is less disturbing to them. Although, they get so busy laying their eggs that it doesn't seem to matter too much what's going on around them. They're very, very unperturbed once they get going.
Yeah, once the hole is dug and the first egg drops, they are very goal directed, and there's not much you can do to scare them off that nest until it's covered and they're gone.
Yeah, look at them. But here's the real heartbreak of it all is like how many of these turtles, they've been through all this, they've evaded the predators, they've, gone on their way, and then they end up hung up in fishing gear. It's just
If you
awful.
think about, let's think back to that slide I showed a little bit ago that showed the migration of a leatherback from New Guinea to Oregon, or New Guinea to Monterey Bay. Imagine the amount of fishing that's going on between one point and the next.
Yeah.
Gill nets, long lines, trawling, any and all of which affect turtles, and typically of all age classes. So not just the adults, but the middle-sized ones and sometimes even the small ones.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a miracle when you see that little baby and you think, wow, that's, how many of those actually get an opportunity to grow to adulthood with all that pressure?
Yeah, and in here in Alameda, we have the U.S. Coast Guard Pacific Command is right adjacent to us, and the number of times that they've come through, some of the guys have come through and told us how they have encountered turtles that are hung up in derelict fishing gear that's adrift, and Coast Guard has actually stopped their patrol to go and rescue the turtles out of this gear, and it's they really love it when they're able to rescue some of them. And
well, Sylvia and I have done that. I wish I could find the photo. I'm sure one of us has it in our collection, but Sylvia and I found one and cut it free in Cocos Island about 15 years ago, I think. I can't remember exactly when that trip was, Sylvia, but yeah, anywhere you look, they're all over. There's ghost gear floating around.
all
Some
over.
of the most, just some of the most heinous things happen to
It's
and
part
not
of the
just
cost of
turtles.
that so-called seafood dinner.
Yeah, it is the real cost of seafood.
And most of it has happened since about the 1950s. Before then, if there were nets and lines, and they were far fewer everywhere, but they were made of materials that would disintegrate eventually. But these new lightweight and relatively inexpensive synthetic materials last. So some of the gear that was deployed in the 1960s is still out there, still killing things. It just accumulates. And now the level of mostly fishing in the high seas that heretofore has been not very much accessed because people couldn't get there. Navigation was trickier back before GPS systems, before it was possible to know exactly where you are, before weather reports were as good as they currently are. So all of this stuff that we put in the ocean just in recent decades is not only there today, it'll be there for decades, even centuries to come.
And the amount of just ocean plastic that's
Well, fishing nets and
fishing nets are
lines
definitely fall into
represent
that.
the great majority of the gear, the plastic stuff that has been released into the ocean.
Yeah,
The
plastic is another serious problem for turtles. I'm sure many of the viewers today have seen the famous YouTube video of the plastic straw being pulled out the nostril of a
Yeah.
turtle.
Oh,
It's just, it's gruesome.
Yeah.
But it turns out that, you know, plastics aren't just the stuff you can see. Sometimes they're microplastics. There's things that have been worn down into almost microscopic pieces. And so they're impacting every life stage of every species of sea turtle out there, whether it's a hatchling that just left the beach, just left the egg, or whether it's you know, a subadult or an adult. Every last one of those turtles has probably got some plastic in its guts, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's enough to kill them.
Yeah. We put this picture in just
Yeah.
because this is the mouth of the leatherback, right? Yeah. And it's got all those little barbs or hooks just specifically to help it hold on to those slippery jellyfish, right?
That's an amazing thing. Yeah, and those are big too. That's like the size of your thumb.
Right. But if you can imagine, you know, you're like a plastic produce bag getting hung up in these things that's really designed to catch and hold a jelly animal, you can see how hard it would be that even if they realize this isn't really something that I want to eat, how do they get rid of it?
Yeah, how do they get rid of it? Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a one-way street. They don't.
One-way street, right? It's just a miraculous adaptation. But this is the kind of stuff that, you know, just so infuriating to see that, you know, they put these long lines out, which can be, you know, dozens of miles long. I mean, how long are the longest long lines that you've encountered?
At least 50 miles.
50 miles. It's like an ultra marathon length.
And it's these people are not out there to catch turtles. They don't even want to catch turtles. It's annoying for them to catch turtles, but they don't have better gear. You know, and this could just as easily be sea lions, sea birds, non-target fish, dolphins.
Again, it's the price of your so-called seafood dinner. I mean, if people just really understood what it takes to take wild animals out of the ocean, this so-called bycatch, bykill, whatever, is just, I mean, it's unacceptable, unacceptable. But you have to know in order to care. And it's really tremendous, Rod, what you're doing and what the whole turtle community of people who are celebrating and doing what they can to take care of turtles are achieving to make people know so they can care and might take action to help reverse the decline.
But as you see in this slide,
more than one way to kill a turtle.
But in this slide sums it up all perfectly. You know, the time for action is now. I mean, it was really maybe a couple decades ago, but she's looking for a book.
Yeah,
wait, no.
Go ahead, keep talking.
This is the beauty.
This is the single most critically endangered population of sea turtles in the world is the American, the Eastern Pacific leatherback. This graphic was built
want to give
to
a shout out
demonstrate what's happened.
to this is Carl Safina's.
Yeah, he
book.
did it. There's that I highly recommend that book. Very, very educational, and of course, Carl's a very beautiful, poetic writer.
He became a sea turtle and shared the perspective of what it's like to be out there in the high seas, in the deep sea, on the beach, wherever it is that they journey.
But isn't it stunning that, given what we know about the importance of the high seas, that it's been like such a challenge to try to get any kind of meaningful protection?
It's half the world.
Yeah.
More
What is it
than-
going to take? What will it take to get some really good high seas protection, do you
Well, I
think?
think it's what Rod is doing and what his colleagues are doing. It's what Carl is doing. It's the idea that if people know and understand that it's not just about the turtles and the whales and other forms of life. It's us. We're at risk if they're at risk. Making that connection is finally getting some traction. We really have to hurry. I mean, this decade of ocean exploration and care, 20% of the ocean, 30% of the ocean to be highly or fully protected by 2030, 30 by 30. It's a worthy goal. And it isn't just about the turtles, so certainly that's part of it. Our lives are on the line too.
Yeah. I mean, as we see the heating up of the planet in general, but you think about those turtles coming ashore and making those nests, and then the increase in heat, just the impact that has on the eggs. I mean, what are they going to do? Try to dig a deeper hole?
Well, the sex is determined by the temperature of the eggs too, is it not, Rod? I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. They don't have an XY chromosome like humans. The temperature or the gender of the baby turtles is determined by the temperature, the average temperature of incubation. So for instance, if you've got a pivotal temperature of 30 degrees centigrade, anything that's 30 and above, if that's the average nest temperature, they're all going to be females. And if it's below that, they're all going to be males. So if the average temperature of beach sand is rising, it could well be, and it is in some places, feminizing the population. But
So
that's just one of many climate change related impacts, of which there are many. Sea level rise being an important one as well, because if the sea goes up and there aren't any beaches where the sea turtles nest, and then acidification, which comes as a climate change collateral impact as well, that's going to have a terrible impact on coral reefs where many species of turtles feed, not to mention the coral reef itself. So yeah, things are coming to a head, and we really need to start focusing on protecting, as Sylvia mentioned, 30% of the oceans by 2030, and that's not enough. And I learned that from Sylvia.
Yeah.
And then human behavior. It all comes back to us. We all know that we're the cause of climate change. And it's we that have to change our behaviors so that climate change diminishes. We all know that we're the problem behind plastic pollution that's ever increasing in the sea. So if we want it to decrease, sure, we can go and try and scoop it out, but that isn't going to work. We have to stop consuming single-use plastics and discarding them improperly. And the same is the case with all the other threats to the sea. It all comes back to two things. The ocean's not healthy because of what we put in it and what we take out of it. And the common thread is we. We got to stop doing things the way we've been doing them and start doing them differently.
And start doing good things.
I always like to say you can't treat the ocean as a supermarket and a sewer at the same time and expect no trouble.
Right.
And the engineers have a huge role in it all as well. And when we were talking about the horseshoe crabs, in several of our episodes we talked about horseshoe crabs, but some of those same things affect sea turtles when you engineer now. Again, think about climate change, sea level rise. So what do? They start building seawalls And then pretty soon, where's the beach?
Yeah.
Or it's obstructed or cut off, or it no longer exists, and now there's just a wall. What are the turtles supposed to do then?
Yeah.
Yeah, a shocking amount of, like, more than 50% of the coastline of Florida is armored in one way or another, seawalls or jetties or
Riprap.
beach nourishment projects and things like that. It's and the turtles need that.
Look at this little guy.
Aw, a distinctive face. Oh,
This is I mentioned the top two priorities in sea turtle conservation globally, if you look at population scale, are the Eastern Pacific leatherback. They've been in decline for many years now, and the Kemp's Ridley, which nests in the Gulf Coast south of Brownsville, Texas, in the state of Tamaulipas, Mexico, and that's their main nesting site, although there's sporadic nesting up into Texas and further down the coast of Mexico. But these animals were really close to extinction in the late 1960s because of, well, a lot of reasons. They had over harvested the eggs and the adults on the beach for food. And then there was a lot of shrimp trawling going on in the Gulf and Southeast US. And turtles were being captured and drowned but thanks to conservation efforts, and thanks to the government of Mexico and the government of the US that supported the effort as well, and groups like the Gladys Porter Zoo in Brownsville that protected virtually every nest for decades. And then the National Marine Fisheries Service, which with help from the shrimpers of the Gulf and Southeast, invented something called the turtle excluder device and made it mandatory that shrimpers, at least US shrimpers, use this turtle excluder device that assures that turtles like this don't get drowned in shrimp nets. That's not justifying any of the other bad stuff that shrimp nets do, but if you're using a Ted, at least you don't kill a turtle.
At least they have like a little escape door that pops open and they can get out, right?
And now they're bouncing back. The population is slowly increasing, but it's nowhere near what it was in the late 40s, when you had tens of thousands of animals nesting, just like those olive ridleys that we saw in the big arabatas, where they all come ashore at once. But slowly but surely, they're coming back, and it's thanks to conservation.
I have this from your.
This is maybe Gigi, you can post. I think Gigi already posted the website for seaturtlestatus.org. This is an effort that I started with some colleagues back in 2003, when I took on the role as co-chair of the Marine Turtle Specialist Group. I thought, well, if we're really going to figure this thing out and save these animals, we better have a good understanding of where they are, what they're doing, because conservation just doesn't work for globally ranging animals unless you know where you can focus your effort. So the first thing that we did was to create a global database and a network of people that contribute voluntarily to that database. The database lives at Duke University, and the people that generate the data are all over the world, in more than 100 countries. So SWOT, the State of the World's Turtles Program, and I realize this is not a very good acronym, but it's better than so what.
Or SWOT, yeah.
and it helps because it allows me to call the entire community of people around the world involved in it the SWOT team. So
very good.
We published our first SWOT magazine in 2006. This is patterned on all my favorite magazines as a child, everything from National Geographic to Highlights for Children. And it's intended to be a magazine for lay people to appreciate science, but also has pretty pictures and fantastic maps. And it's so pretty that you can't throw it away, kind of like that giant collection of Nat Geos that we all have in our basement.
Oh, yes.
So the database, when we started in 2004, we had nothing. We had the database in Duke, but then by 2019, as you can see, we've got data from every sea turtle ocean basin in the world, all species. We're able to now look at what we only knew was a global population of leatherback turtles to now a genetically defined set of subpopulations. That helps us focus our attention on conservation as well. So the database is growing, growing, growing. Every year it's a little more. We did a map of Ridley turtles that we published last year. It had 750 data points in it. And this year we did hawksbills and it had 1,700 data
Wow.
points in it, which is almost more than we can even put on a map.
Really
We started doing, this is,
yeah.
yeah, this is the first ever national scale comprehensive map of sea turtle biogeography for Costa Rica. And from there we went on to continents, South America, Africa, and we started to look at telemetry or satellite tracking data so that we could see where they go in the sea. Those pale green and white lines that go all the way up to Canada, those are leatherbacks that nest in Suriname, Guyana, and French Guiana. And then they go up into the cold waters off of Nova Scotia to feed on jellyfish when they're not nesting.
It's really quite remarkable that, you know, you have a reptile, which people are like, oh, it's, you know, cold-blooded animal, but they're going into like that colder water. And
Yeah, no, they're incredibly mammalian sometimes. They can kind of turn it on and off too, which is another amazing. Yeah, leatherbacks are incredible creatures.
It's so beautiful. Here's some from Africa.
Yeah, this is a similar map from Africa. You can see those sort of pale green and white dots or data cells on the between South America. Those are animals that nest in one place and feed in another place. They go crisscross those oceans like it's nothing.
Wow.
So what this allowed us to do when we started to see the movements, get better genetic data, understand movements of turtles from tag returns, we were able to take what we originally thought was just one single population of leatherback turtles globally and break it down into what we call regional management units, or subpopulations would be another way to call them. And that allows us to then set priorities for where the conservation action needs to happen. This is a conservation priority map that we did for the green turtle. This was published back almost 10 years ago, I think now. And so as a conservationist, it doesn't help me to know that the green turtle is endangered. But if you see that red there, that red says the green turtle is globally vulnerable, but it's critically endangered in those red zones. And then you've got places over in the pink area over there in Indonesia, where you've got 3 different subpopulations that are all living together that overlap and are all under threat. So now I know, as a conservationist, I better invest in those red dots, those pink dots, and in the areas where I don't have data, I better invest in more research so that I can build the data that I need to be able to set good priorities.
Yeah. It's all look like candidates for hope spots, right?
All of them, yeah.
A lot of them are hope spots.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Let's hope none of them are hopeless.
No.
So this is SWOT report number 7, and I think, as I mentioned, that Gigi posted seaturtlestatus.org in the chat. You can go look at all 16 volumes of SWOT report that has very interesting articles that are easy for normal non-scientist people to read. Lots of pretty pictures and cool maps, and even some games. Like I said, I was influenced by highlights for children when we designed how the magazine was going to look.
How many sea turtles can you find in this picture?
Yeah, that sort of thing. You know, who doesn't want to play those games, right? We all love that. So we use these data to do sort of a hotspots approach. This is something that Sylvia and I were involved in back in the 90s for rainforests and coral reefs. And now we're doing it from the taxonomic perspective. So now with much greater degree of accuracy, the sea turtle community can say where conservation needs to happen and when. And then we can start to take that data and overlay it with impacts of fisheries. And all of you, if you look carefully at this map, you see some red squares and some red circles. That's places where you've got extremely high fisheries pressure, and the presence of turtles is high as well. So again, this is all about where do we focus our limited resources and limited manpower to have the biggest impact on sea turtle conservation. And then when we take this data, we can also do projections for the future. This was a study that was done with SWOT data a few years ago, demonstrating which habitats would be most suitable for turtles in the face of the threat of climate change. And you can see that this allows us to know what beaches, for instance, might need to be protected now, because they're going to be extremely important 10, 20, 30 years from now, once beaches elsewhere start to disappear.
So there are allegedly 7 distinctively different kinds of sea turtles.
Yes, 7 species.
But there's some, you've been pointing out some subgroups or populations that.
Right, these are not taxonomically different, but they are different down to what they call the haplotype level. If you look at the genetics, if I take blood from a leatherback in the Caribbean or on a certain beach in the Caribbean, my colleagues at the Southwest Fisheries National Marine Fisheries Service office in La Jolla can look at that blood and they can tell where that turtle came from, because there's enough data on gathered so far about turtle genetics. It hasn't really making them taxonomically different, but still knowing that helps us be better conservationists.
And it all starts with kids.
Started with you being a kid,
right?
Falling in love with turtles.
Is that you, Liz? No.
No, that's not me. Although I did play with a lot of turtles and terrapins and tortoises growing up, and to rescue them and move them about, get them out of the road, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I still do. I'm based in Virginia, but I look out in my backyard some mornings and I think to myself how lucky I am that I have 3 or maybe even 4 species of native turtles in my backyard. Yeah. So once you know what the priorities are, then you can start conservation. When it became evident that the Eastern Pacific leatherback was on the brink of extinction, it set the stage for collaboration between all the American Pacific countries from Mexico on down to Chile to get together and to come up with strategies to understand the threat better and to start solving the problems. This is part of the solution is engaging people. Mr. Leatherback is really good at engaging people. So public awareness, education, talking to the people where they are, where they live, about the things that matter to them around and using turtles as the vehicle, the flagships, the icons to help tell these stories is such an important part of conservation. And then engaging, not just building networks, but engaging people and keeping them engaged in networks focused on providing them with alternatives, solutions, behaviors that make more sense for the world that we live in. We have a very active program at Oceanic Society called Blue Habits, and Gigi, if you'll be so kind as to post the link to that, bluehabits.org, you can learn more. You can join that community, be part of that community. And I think share with Sylvia the view that maybe the most important first step is to go outside, go out into nature.
Go get wet.
Not only do you need to see this stuff while you still have a chance, but there's no greater source of motivation and inspiration than nature, than the sea, than the animals that live in the sea. And we know from experience that once you have that motivation, that inspiration, that you will want to do something, and you'll want to do more and more every day.
So, Rod, I think of you as Mr. Turtle. But you had a predecessor who also deserves that name. That's Archie Carr.
That's right. Mhm.
Really, I know one of your great heroes and mine as well, and for many, certainly turtles around the world are applauding right now. Before you really got into the thick of turtledom, he really began to pave the way with understanding, especially the green turtle and that lost generation, to solve where do the turtles go when they leave the beach, and really was a pioneer in terms of understanding the nature of these creatures and many others as well. So another shout out to.
I know Archie was a mentor. He was. I used to my paychecks when I worked in Miami were signed by Archie, and I often thought, should I keep this for the autograph value of it, or should I cash
Yeah,
it?
that's where you need to put
buy
the
groceries?
deposit by photo, right? Keep the original.
But
This is
he was an inspiration to almost everybody that works in sea turtles today. That's old enough to remember his books. And what he did was he took nature, and not just turtles. I mean, that was his thing, but he and his wife were into all sorts of conservation activities, and he wrote books that people could read and become engaged. And in his lifetime, he did many fabulous things, like discover the beach where the Kemp's Ridley turtles nest. Basically bring the green turtle back from extinction in the Caribbean. So hats off to Archie Carr. And now in memory of Archie, there's a reserve up by north of Jupiter on the Florida coast called the Archie Carr Wildlife Sanctuary, can't remember, but that is a protected beach where since it's been protected, the populations of turtles have increased. The nesting of green turtles, I think, has increased by 300%.
That's awesome.
Wow.
This is a little video that you took, and yes, let's see what it is. Ascension. Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to stop screen sharing to do that. I know you love your little turtle crawling in the ocean. It's so loud.
You can hear the waves roaring.
It's a long trip down.
Sounds like it's in outer space.
I know, right? Speeding the turtle. Speed the turtle. Oh,
there she goes.
And she's.
All right.
Wow.
Back to you.
All right. So now we're going to jump into some of the questions here.
Okay.
Let's see. Victoria's asking, saying thank you so much for all the hard work, Rod. Climate issues are increasing nest temperatures and significantly threatening genetic diversity. Consider the tiny chance that rehatching already has. Can we quantify this issue for long-term prognosis?
Actually, people are working on that. There's so many assumptions that still need to be tested. For instance, is what are natural sex ratios in the wild? Is it one? It's not 1-to-1. It's probably more likely 3-to-1. But what happens if it gets skewed to 5, 6, 10-to-1? Is that going to, how is that going to impact sea turtle populations? And these are all things that the science on them has advanced enormously in the last 10 to 20 years. But in particular, the Australians are working on this issue with turtles that nest in one of the largest, if not the largest, aggregations of green turtles in the world at a place called Rain Island. So yeah, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. It is having an impact now, and its climate is going to continue to have an impact, and it'll probably become even more exacerbated over time, assuming that we don't, turn the tide by wise government policies and human behaviors.
Awesome. So how do you feel about taking a live question today?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, Gigi, it looks like somebody's hand is raised. You want to?
Oh, actually, it's somebody I know.
This could be the sneaker question. So, let's see. Dragna, can
you are cleared to speak. Unmute
Yep.
and please ask your question.
So you know Dragana?
Yes, we met we've been texting for the last couple of weeks because she has a home in West Palm, very close to, if not on, a sea turtle nesting beach, and it's sea turtle nesting season right now.
Yeah, fantastic.
Both loggerheads and leatherbacks are coming ashore. Dragana has a friend, Barbara, who's got a big camera mounted on a pole, and she can move the camera around, and it's a night vision camera. So just a couple of days ago, she sent me a picture of a nesting leatherback. Beautiful to see. But one of the things that they've encountered there is that you've got a camera. You can also see all the people walking around.
Yeah.
And the dogs. And she sent me a video of some people walking around with shovels over their shoulders.
Oh.
I don't know what they were doing with those shovels, but nothing good.
No.
Buried treasure.
So did you have a question, Dragana?
Dragana, you are still on mute. Can you unmute and ask your question?
Okay, sorry about that. I thought I had spoken. So anyway, very nice to meet you all. I'm Dragana Connaughton. I actually am on the board of directors for the National Wildlife Refuge Association. I've been doing that work for about 7 years. And just to go back to you, Sylvia, I just came back from filming a movie about plastics and sea level rise and the albatrosses at Midway Atoll. So I had spent, and I know you were there, and I saw all your books, and I stayed at the Charlie Barracks. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day. But we recently just had an inlet dredging happen here in the town of Palm Beach. And they went overtime, and they just demobilized all the heavy equipment that they put onto the beach. And as a person very into conservation and loving turtles, very upset about the machinery being on the beach. And then at the very end of May 23rd, they ended up tilling the beach. So they went for a whole mile, and we are a very heavily nested area. So Barbara and I are both proposing a variety of different things to the town of Palm Beach. And one, as you stated earlier, about the no vehicles. But what are your thoughts? So we need the habitat, okay? We need the sand because of beach erosion. But I really feel that there should be a cutoff time, like when it starts, and it should start, if they propose or thinking that the project will take 3 months, then it should start at an early time and end at a specific time before turtle nesting season. Because this has really been bad about what's happening here. And yes, we're having problems with people with umbrellas. They're not marking all the nests. People are digging. There are dogs without leashes that are digging nests. There are vehicles with people cleaning the beaches. I want to go back to old hand raking or leave the sargassum weed where it is, because it's good for the environment, good for the beach. But what are your thoughts about that? What do you do?
Well, clearly a project like that needs to have an environmental impact assessment before it ever starts. And part of that environmental impact assessment has got to be that craziness doesn't go on while you've got endangered turtles nesting on your beach.
Exactly. And we have, black leatherbacks here for sure,
And I mean, I've just edited an article about how we believe that the Caribbean and North Atlantic leatherbacks were in good shape for the last few years, but in the last 2-3 years, we're now starting to think that there's a decline in leatherbacks in the Atlantic as well. So this is not a species you want to play games with, nor the loggerhead, which nests there in abundance. So yeah, I think it's a simple issue of you don't do a project, and I can't believe that there aren't regulations that require them to do EIAs before something like that happens. If something skews the schedule of the workers, that's tough luck. There's got to be some sharp deadlines that you don't surpass on those, and that that's a lot of that. And I've mentioned this to Dragana before, is that it's the people that live there. It's the conservation it's like politics. It's all local,
Right.
and you're the one. This is happening in your backyard with species that you care about, and you're the one with the voice that local politicians are most likely to listen to. And so congratulations for being a voice and for bringing together your colleagues and others, and to going to those hearings and sending those letters and raising a little hell, because people need to know that this is rototilling the beach during
Lord.
season is.
Oh, I just almost, that just did me in. And then I believe I sent you a photograph of one of the workers, or perhaps a turtle monitor. There was an image of a loggerhead in between, surrounded by 4 tractors, which that picture just really did me in. I was just, okay, can't do this anymore. And this project literally just stopped 2 weeks ago, and there's nests everywhere.
It's a federally protected species, right? This is,
Yes. Oh, I know it is.
this is no game. So if someone damages or inappropriately even touches this, they could be up for federal prosecution. It's a big deal in America.
So we've got a few more questions to go through here. Lauren is asking, how can someone with zero experience but a burning passion for all things oceans get really involved?
Do you want to answer that one, Sylvia?
Dive in.
Dive in. Well, I think
Sign up.
to the point we were just talking about. Getting involved locally can just be an enormous help. I mean, everything that we do, whether we're living on the coast or we're living hundreds of miles inland, we're all connected. And whatever happens in freshwater, saltwater, coastal water, wetlands, in your lawn, in your garden, it is all.
That's right. You can clean up garbage on the beach. People are getting together all the time to do that, and you can clean up garbage on the riverbank in Colorado, because it's going to end up in the ocean if it isn't cleaned up. We're all connected. It's the water is the blood that runs through planet Earth, and but also join with others. Go check out the website at bluehabits.org. It's a online community where people talk to one another. They sign up together to do whale watches or beach cleanups or birding, and get out into nature and be a part of it. You don't have to be a trained biologist or a trained politician. It just needs people doing the right thing.
Doing your thing. I mean, the real key is understand who you are and what you're good at, what your power is. It's about not just knowing and not even about caring. It's about taking what you got and putting it to work. And I said, dive in. Everybody can do something. Nobody can do it all. And Rod is absolutely right. It's a team sport. Saving the world is a team sport. Saving turtles. Every turtle counts.
Absolutely.
And everything you can do individually, adding to what all of us need to do collectively, is what it's going to take.
Yeah. So I have one more question that I have for you. You know, you run these whale watching trips with the Oceanic Society off the coast of California here. You ever seen a leatherback offshore here?
Oh, I have not seen them, but the people that go on our, what Liz is talking about is Oceanic Society, the organization that I work for. Sylvia's one of my board members and has been involved with Oceanic Society, I think, since the very beginning. We are the first ocean conservation nonprofit in America, started in 1969. Not long after the Santa Barbara oil spill that got people up in arms. And of course, if you know anything about 1969, you know it was a pretty big year for activism, and that's when Oceanic Society was born. And since the early 70s, we've been doing expeditions because the mission of the institution is to deepen the connections between people and nature. And we discovered that the best way to deepen the connections between people and nature is to take people and put them in nature. and let
No
nature
child left dry.
it's not about reading books. It's not about looking at National Geographic. Inspiration comes from nature.
Absolutely.
Inspiration turns to motivation. Motivation becomes action. That's how we build a conservation community. So we've been doing whale watches since the early 70s. You can sign up any weekend to go to the Farallones. There's whales out there, incredible numbers of whales. 2 weeks ago, our people that went out on our cruise spent 4 hours with a pod of orcas.
Oh, wow.
We see humpbacks like crazy, blue whales when they're in season, gray whales when they're in season, and occasionally a leatherback. My last trip out there, I saw a great white shark by the Farallones because it's right in the middle of what they call the red triangle of density of
those leatherbacks are still being wily with you, aren't they?
They're hard to find in the wild, but where there's jellies, there's leatherbacks, and there's jellies in the summer in Monterey Bay and up the California coast. Awesome. So, I invite you to sign up, go on a whale watch with us. We're now doing, we have a program called Critter Scholars. It's a fund that we've established to help people that couldn't otherwise afford to take a whale watching trip get out there too. So we're sourcing schools of underserved kids in the San Francisco Bay Area from all over the San Francisco Bay Area. We've done, I think, 4 or 5 of these now. And it's just fantastic. If you could see the faces of these little kids that most of them have never been on a boat, let alone, be on a boat with biologists telling them what they're looking at and seeing whales and dolphins and sea lions. So it's a super impactful program. We want to keep it going for as long as we can. And then we also do international travel all over the place, anywhere there's oceans. And in fact, Sylvia and I are going to be leading a trip to the Galapagos. There's no room left, so don't try and sign up.
There's always a next time.
But we're leaving on 14th of July. It's a partnership between Mission Blue and Oceanic Society. They've brought down a research vessel from Costa Rica with a 2-man submarine and a whole bunch of researchers that are going to get chances to do things that have never been done before or that haven't been done since the 60s or 70s. And so now we get to have a look at what's changed since then. And we've even got a second vessel just so that people can come along and watch.
Excellent.
So we're very excited about that trip. But Oceanic Society, when was the last we've done so many trips together, Sylvia, over the years. We've done Cocos.
I don't know.
Not enough. More to come.
At least 3 times. We did Palau. We made a lovely movie about our trip to Palau. That's part of a series that you can see at oceanicsociety.org. And yeah, get out in nature. That's step one.
All right. Well, we are well past the top of the hour. And
But who's counting?
But who's counting, right? Exactly. But we do have to sign off for today. But before we close, I'd like to say thank you so much. And thank you to our guests and to our producer, the Ocean Elders. Mostly just thank everyone in the community who's showing up and participating in these events. Dive In feels like home to us. We really appreciate all of you. I also want to remind everyone that it is Pride Month in June, and just like water, love connects us all, and nature. And we're grateful to everyone. So we'll see you next time, and until then, take care of the ocean.
And remember, the world is blue, and we must
take care of the ocean
as if
your life depends on it.
Because
it does. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. And bye for now.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.